Chapter 24. Running from the Storm. Lorenzo had finished loading the last wolf into the back of the box truck when he spotted Polina huffing her way into view from a nearby alley.
Lena, I thought you were going to miss out on all the fun.
Ha! She panted in relief. Having arrived, she doubled over long enough to get her first full breath in 2 blocks.
I would not miss out on a party for all the money you spend on shoes.
Polina approached the truck, her gaze fixed on the walking wounded, including the Mongolian and his pack. She knew there was a lot of work. With a huff and a roll of her eyes, she handed Lorenzo the medical bag.
Ivy brought bandages.
She said, shocked by her attitude and possibly her smell. Lorenzo understood what she meant. He climbed into the truck to administer first aid to the injured werewolves. Polina followed him a moment later, delayed by a stabbing pain in her back. Once inside, she pushed the pain aside and focused on the task. They quickly assessed and treated the most serious injuries, stabilizing the group for transport. The Mongolian was out like a light after being the victim of the assassin's gunfire and thrown from the building. He would need the most TLC after the battle but was also the easiest to treat. Unconscious patients whined less when their mobile room took hard corners or leapt over speed bumps. Lorenzo was injured, and Polina checked him over after the wolves. However, he mistook her concern for flirting, and she had to demand that he sit down. Polina didn't waste time getting to the point and forced him to sit while she straddled him. Despite her stern expression, Lorenzo seemed to be enjoying the attention. She ripped the remnants of his jacket off with a forceful tug as she hunted for the worst of his injuries. He had lost a lot of blood. There were enough black stains on his undershirt that she could have sworn it had always been the color of his blood. The vampire was peppered with shrapnel. The most had left huge lacerations in his upper arms. It happened when he protected himself from the worst of the blast. Lorenzo made a show of yipping and growling as she pulled concrete and wood from his flesh.
Quit whining, pretty boy. Could have been much worse.
He winced as she finished removing fragments and went about applying pressure to his mangled limb. She shot him an impatient glance. She regretted it. She found herself caught up in his half-mad grin and goofy expression. It was so comical that she couldn't help but burst into laughter. To focus them both, she yanked his arm bandage hard enough to cause him to yelp in pain again. As he recovered from the shock and hurt of her mean treatment, she grabbed his chin and rotated it to share her view. The supernatural storm was almost on them. It was 3 to 4 blocks off and approaching fast. Oh, he managed as he realized how much trouble they were in. Lorenzo grabbed her by the wrist before she could work on his other arm. It was gentle with a soft touch. He met her eyes with a warm intensity he had not known in a lifetime. Thanks. He paused to marvel at her soft and worried face.
You know how to keep a guy together.
Polina blushed as she thought about Lorenzo. They had always flirted, but she knew there had to be a distance between them. After all, she was a killer with a wild romantic life, and he was next in line for Papa Mac's position. She had never seen him show any interest in romance, but she couldn't help wanting something more with him. However, she knew it was too easy to fall for him and lose herself in his eyes. Luckily, fate intervened and saved her from having to make a move. Siddiqui found himself alone in the truck, isolated from the world around him. Since Max appeared out of nowhere, he remained frozen in the driver's seat. The day had disconnected him from any meaningful interaction with reality, leaving him in a dreamlike state. As he glanced over, he noticed the black hound sitting patiently in the passenger seat. Its eyes, smoldering with sadness, caught his attention. He had been repulsed by them, but the intensity had faded. Now, he was so close to the black beast that he could have reached out to comfort it if only he could muster the will to move. He could have remained in this vegetative state indefinitely, free from pain and worry. His emotions had become pale and feeble attempts at independence. But that was not his destiny. Suddenly, he was jolted back to reality by an eerie howl that echoed through the rain-soaked street. He blinked and shook his head, trying to clear his mind. He looked around and realized the passenger seat was empty, leaving him alone in the car. Everyone in the back of the truck stood as they registered the call of their impending doom. This howl was a primal challenge to meet. Everyone knew its meaning: certain death and the city's doom.
I got this,
Lorenzo courageously intoned as he stood. He relented on his gentle grasp to allow Polina to prepare. She stepped toward the rear doors and opened the lock. Lukman started thrashing in a state of insanity. In his frenzy, everyone stared at him. As his parched lips moved in an unsettling way, his voice sounded as dry and rigid as his body was turning. It resembled a gravel mixer slowly grinding out each word.
He's coming for me. He deserves the power I've taken. He'll eliminate all of you.
A louder howl echoed through the air, closer this time. The frail man could only be talking about the mummy.
If it was hiding this way 10.
Polina pushed aside thoughts of what could have led to the mummy's release from the museum. She decided to try a different approach and marched over to the Mongolian. She jolted the hefty man out of his daze with a powerful backhand. After unleashing a torrent of Russian shouts, she observed the large man's stunned expression eventually transform into a nod of comprehension. They needed to act swiftly to ensure the wolf's sacrifice would not be in vain. The Mongolian positioned himself at the back of the truck, prepared with his remaining arrows to confront whatever chaos awaited them. He attentively monitored the advancing storm as it barreled down the street, anticipating the next piercing howl that would pierce through the tempest. Hate fueled Polina's conviction. Despite knowing that Jackie would do anything to save Dom from the depths of hell, she couldn't shake off the fear of losing Jackie. Polina was determined to take action. Reading her thoughts, Lorenzo responded.
He's alive, Polina. Nothing kills my kiddo without my permission.
She played along.
I know. But it seems like we have to clean up each message again.
Before she could stop herself, she kissed his cheek. Letting her motion push her past him, she caught the briefest of smiles across his luxurious face. She didn't have a moment to waste and berated herself for it. Ignoring the wounded members of the pack, she quickly got out of the truck and rushed to the other side. With a sudden jump, she landed in the passenger seat by Siddiqui, who was regaining consciousness. "Hey, you!" she shouted, causing him to jolt awake. He looked at her with a dazed expression.
Pull yourself together. You're in trouble and we need to leave now.
Siddiqui glanced at Polina before his eyes shifted to the rearview mirror. He noticed a cluster of the condensed storm, twirling with lightning, heading towards them rapidly. The storm was so powerful that it subdued the massive storm behind it, absorbing the downpour to fuel its elemental fury. The overweight man turned pale with fear, but this fear broke his paralysis. He regained composure and asked,
Where do we go now?
Polina made her ascent up the side of the cab to a perch on the top. She braced herself against the boxy roof of the cargo hold and said,
Roy from that.
Lukman kept complaining and waving his arms while the wolves settled down and secured their positions. A wolf inspected and discovered a crate filled with German stick bombs and a few German-style machine pistols. They distributed weapons while Lorenzo limped to the front of the hold and banged his bandaged arm against the wall 3 times.
Time to move. We don't want to be caught.
Siddiqui revved the engine and floored the gas pedal, forcing the truck into gear. With a jolt, the vehicle surged forward, picking up speed as quickly as possible. The storm loomed ominously behind them, rapidly closing in. Siddiqui was aware they were running out of time but was determined to make the most of their escape, no matter how long it lasted. A block later, the storm caught up with the truck as it bucked and slid uncontrollably. Siddiqui struggled to keep the vehicle on course, his eyes wide with panic and his palms slick with sweat. The street ahead was barely visible through the tempest. All that mattered was keeping the gas pedal fully depressed and the truck moving forward. Meanwhile, Lorenzo braced himself against the wind and watched a shadow emerge from the storm. He knew this was the source of his troubles and requested a grenade, crossing himself for protection. He spent a moment deciphering its mechanism. As he prepared to discard it, another shadow appeared alongside the first. As the massive creature emerged from the turbulent storm, Luqman exclaimed, "It's here." Its menacing fangs and drenched appearance resembled the embodiment of death approaching them all. The mummy attacked the truck, but the Mongolian quickly responded with arrows. However, the creature was hardly affected and continued to fly towards them. Right before it landed, Polina shot it in the head with her rifle. She was in a dangerous position, trying to maintain balance on the wet surface of the truck. As they fled, the mummy's jaw moved in a spell-casting motion and chased them without being affected by their attacks. The creature's magic controlled the debris and rubble around them, causing them to fly through the air. It hammered the truck, tossing its occupants around like rag dolls. Lorenzo lost his grip on his grenade and it was swallowed by the storm. The monster continued its assault, unleashing its magical powers on the truck. It relentlessly pursued the vehicle, eventually reaching it and pouncing on one of the rear doors with such strength that it almost tore it off. The door now trailed behind the truck with a waterfall of sparks. Polina reloaded her rifle and aimed at the creature. As soon as its mouth opened, she pulled the trigger, and the bullet went straight through its head, leaving a bloody mess behind. The impact was so strong that it finished ripping the door off the truck and sent the mummy flying into the storm. However, it quickly recovered and charged the vehicle. Suddenly, its hind leg blew off, causing it to collapse violently. But it was not because of the ones inside the truck. Thomas's motorbike appeared speeding perilously close to the mummy. Dom's cannon left a trail of smoke behind while Thomas's face was intensely focused. Jackie's eyes were captivated by the German stick grenade he had caught. Lorenzo cheered. The other wolves joined in with elated howling. Their cheers halted as savage claws punctured the side of the truck and took purchase. The beast was attached to the outside. Everyone in the cab backed away from the talons as they withdrew and attacked the truck again. It was climbing now, trying to get to the roof. The bike cautiously maneuvered around the truck and disappeared. Lorenzo could faintly hear Dom's grumbling. "What do we do now? Our options are dwindling, and soon we'll only be hurling insults." Meanwhile, on the bike, Jackie examined his new toy, repeatedly flipping it over, captivated by the twist cap at the bottom. After a few moments, the metal part detached from the bike, bouncing away and vanishing forever. A lengthy string fell onto Jackie's lap, with a wooden ball attached to one end. Jackie was intrigued and pulled the string from his new toy, scratching his pumpkin chin as he reminisced about the last time he held something similar.
"Hey boss, is this one of those explosive sticks from the war?"
While Dom examined the mummy, he briefly looked at his inquisitive colleague. Suddenly, his eyes widened as he saw the explosive device that Jackie was holding.
"Jackie, you fool. That's a live grenade."
Jackie simply shrugged and nonchalantly threw the grenade into the bag of obsidian arrowheads that Thomas had brought. He then hurled the bag towards the mummy, who was on the roof of the truck in front of them.
"No more problem, boss."
The beast jumped out of the truck and headed straight for the trike with lethal determination. However, before it reached its target, the satchel hit it in midair, causing it to explode. Deadly shards of obsidian rained down on the creature. The impact was so severe that it sent the beast flying end over end until it crashed into the wall of a nearby building. As he turned, the motorcycle engine let out a deafening roar. As he joyfully pumped his fist, Thomas noticed the creature was wounded. He decided to ram it at top speed, imagining its destruction beneath the wheels of his plucky vehicle. Dom realized what Thomas had in mind and threw himself free of the sidecar. Thomas and Jackie rode it to within feet of the stunned creature before sliding off and charging towards it. All the bumping and jostling caused Jackie to roll away in a pile of vines and colorful Bronxian language. The front wheel of the bike smashed into the mummy with enough force to pin it against a building. The momentum of the impact lifted the rest of the bike, causing it to land on top of the creature. The mummy howled in rage at the impudent attack on its failing physical form. As it batted the bike off itself, Thomas used the momentum from his dismount to smash into the creature's midsection with the Makuahuitl. He buried its obsidian spikes deep in the creature. Dom's pistol had skidded somewhere in the nearby vicinity during his jump. As he stood up from the wet street, he realized they had a problem.
Jackie. We need the cannon. I lost it somewhere.
The pumpkin hobbled back into view, calling out, "Cannon!" like some elderly matron seeking her lost poodle by the same name. Dom drew his pistols from their holsters. He regretted not bringing more ammunition, as he had foolishly assumed that this ordeal would be over with a single shot. He knew he only had a few rounds left between them. It was a bad situation, since his new friend fought for his life against a giant dog monster a few feet away. Although he couldn't stop the monster, he hoped to distract it while Thomas attacked. He aimed his first pistol and fired, causing its shoulder to explode as it tore through both it and the wall behind it with incredible force. Dom was amazed by what he saw, but his curiosity was interrupted by Polina, who was on top of the retreating truck with her smoking rifle. He thought to himself,
"Damn. She knows how to steal a guy's thunder."
Dodging Thomas's aggressive attack, the creature hastily muttered a spell. A streak of crimson lightning pierced through the escaping vehicle's engine block. The impact caused sparks to fly and lights to flare throughout the vehicle. The engine immediately died, the tires burst, and shards of glass from the windshield shattered in every direction. The vehicle swerved wildly out of sight while Siddiqui desperately struggled to regain control. The mummy turned and stood upright in front of Thomas. It paid no attention to the barrage of bullets from Dom's pistols as it prepared to tear Thomas apart. Thomas stood his ground, unafraid and filled with a determination that would have made his ancestors proud. Jackie materialized beside Dom, holding the hand cannon. He resembled a loyal retriever bringing a toy back to its owner. The firearm was in his mouth. Dom swiftly snatched it from his partner and rummaged through his pockets for something to add to its ammunition.
Jackie. We need a piece of obsidian. I might have a plan.
Oh, boss, that stuff gives me a tingly sensation. If I behave really well, I could get more. Dom shook his head, realizing that his partner must have sampled the powder he had loaded into the weapon before abandoning the bike.
Buddy, I won't let you become addicted to something that could make your head explode. Now, help me find one of those stones.
Trying to be helpful, Jackie approached the desperate detective and pulled on his pant leg.
Most of them blew up when I tossed the bag at the toilet paper puppy.
Dom's heart sank. They were running out of time and options. Jackie rocked back and forth on his heels to something rattling around in his head. After a moment, the orange oaf's face suddenly lit up with realization. In a comical display, he widened his facial orifices, directed his face to the ground, and began slapping himself on the back of his head. Dom raised an eyebrow at his partner's peculiar behavior until a pair of shiny obsidian arrowheads fell out of his partner's head and clattered onto the ground.
Hey, boss, look what I found.
Jackie exclaimed with excitement. The troublemaker had swallowed him at the museum, mistaking them for tough licorice. Dom smashed them into fragments with the butt of the cannon. Afterward, he snatched the obsidian shards and jammed them as far down the cannon's barrel as possible.
Sure thing, boss. Catch you later.
Jackie said with a wave before sprinting towards the battle. Dom watched in bewilderment as his energetic colleague eagerly joined the deadly dance with the avatar of Anubis. As Thomas swung and yelled, the creature proved too quick for him. It landed a blow on his side, sending him flying into his bike. Jackie attempted to take down the creature with mixed results. He tried to strangle it with a vine and took a bite out of its shoulder, but the pumpkin flesh wasn't enough for the savage attack he had in mind. The creature recovered too quickly for Jackie to keep his grip. Jackie cried, "Not again," before it threw him to the ground and squashed him. Dom steeled his resolve and yelled at the monster, "Hey, ugly!" He marched to the thing, far too close for safety. The mummy's massive head swung around to face him.
Sit.
The hand cannon went off, point blank at the creature's skull, causing it to rip apart like an overripe melon. The remains of the mummy fell back and away from the detective. Its lifeless form finally came to rest sprawled before him.